Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. We couldn't wait for the race for U.S. Senate to get started in earnest here in New Hampshire, and recently the first major Republican candidate officially joined the contest. And it's a familiar face, former U.S. Senator and Ambassador to New Zealand, Scott Brown, and he joins us this morning for an interview. Ambassador, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. It's good to see you, and good morning to you and your viewers.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since we had you as a declared candidate. You know, you've had this long and varied career in public service. You've done so many different things, a decade-long break from actually running for office, and politics has really only become more brutal and bare-knuckled in the meantime. So what's motivating you to get back in and run?
Well, before I answer that, I think it's important to note that today is the one-year anniversary of the assassination attempt for President Trump. Obviously, a loving father was killed, others were hurt, and the thing that really bothered me, and I'm going to answer your question, is that the people in the mainstream media didn't take it seriously. The party, the Democratic Party, a lot of them, the extreme part of the party, really didn't give it the credence that it really deserved. And that's kind of the problem. You have Chris Pappas, nice guy. I saw him this past weekend up at Nassau, where we had the 100th birthday life celebration of life for, Hope. And I asked him to come up and play with the band, and we kind of chuckled. And, so there's no ill will. But, you look at the party today. It's not JFK, Bill Clinton, or Barack Obama's party. It's very extreme. It's the AOC. It's the Mamdani party. And a lot of what you're seeing is that extremism. And it really drove me to recognize that we have in New Hampshire Governor Sununu, Governor Ayotte, House, Senate, Executive Council, all Republicans, but our delegation is Democrat, and they're dealing with the open borders, the sanctuary cities, the men and boys and women and girls sports, not supporting our ICE agents. And as I travel around and as I'm watching this, I'm saying I have to get involved because they're not representing and protecting that New Hampshire advantage. And I think that's very, very important.
You endorsed Donald Trump back in 2016 before it was really popular. You were one in the vanguard, really, of getting behind him and getting behind his first presidential campaign. Is it a bad sign that he has not returned the favor and endorsed you right out of the gate for Senate?
Well, I've been doing it for 14, 15 days. Obviously, would appreciate his support, and I've obviously met with the team, but more importantly, I care about the New Hampshire voters. As I've traveled around the state, they're very concerned about the direction that the Democratic Party, the extreme part of the party, is taking our state. And as I referenced the New Hampshire advantage, as you look at, for example, the recent Big Beautiful Bill, a lot of the things in there actually benefit dramatically New Hampshire residents, whether it's doubling the child care tax credit, whether it's having accelerated depreciation, expanding and doubling the death tax exemption. There's so many things in there that are really good, and our delegation in Chris Pappas, because obviously we're running against each other, is not just a no, he's a hell no in helping New Hampshire citizens, and I think that's wrong.
One more question about President Trump. What if he endorses a different Republican candidate who gets in the race? Can you win if you're not inside the MAGA circle?
Well, I'm not going to look in a crystal ball. I'm going to continue to work hard. I don't know what he's going to do and when he's going to do it. He's been kind of busy trying to get world peace and deal with a whole host of other issues. But as I travel around the state, regardless of who endorses who, and I'm honored that we just released 200 people as of yesterday who have endorsed me, from leaders, veterans, regular folks who just want a different approach to politics in D.C. So I'm going to continue to march. I'm running regardless, whatever.
Yeah. You mentioned Congressman Pappas. He is undefeated in the last 4 statewide elections, at least within his first congressional district. How do you beat him when no one other Republican has been able to do that?
Well, listen, it's great to have won, and I said it's nothing personal, but you just point out his record. He is in lockstep when you're talking about things that affect our New Hampshire advantage and people in New Hampshire, the open borders, the sanctuary cities. Imagine being in his restaurant, which he owns, and walking in and telling your employees, by the way, I didn't vote to give you a no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and those seniors and the Bluebird specials, yeah, you can pay more on your Social Security. He voted against those things. So how do you explain that to his employees and voters? So yeah, he's going to have to answer the questions, and I'll debate him tomorrow. I'll come next Sunday on your show, and we'll talk about these important issues because it matters. What you're seeing right now in New York City with the socialist communist person, These are the types of people that are supporting Chris Pappas. I mean, you have, I think Amy Klobuchar recently came, and others are going to come. He's going to need their help, but they're all the same. They support the open borders. They support the sanctuary cities. And the fact that Chris Pappas and others in our delegation haven't supported our ICE officials, and he doesn't support qualified immunity for our police as they're doing their jobs, it's a non-starter. I got a couple of days ago, I got the endorsement from the New England Police Benevolent Association. Law enforcement is with me because they understand what's at stake.
I'm going to get to immigration in a second, but on the one big beautiful bill, is it worth cutting the entitlements and the assistance programs if you're not going to really meaningfully cut the debt and the deficit, or even really slow its growth? Well,
that's a great question. And certainly I've heard Chris say Scott Brown doesn't want to protect Medicaid and SNAP. Well, that's not true. Let's take SNAP, for example. I was one of those people on that program, so to think that I don't want to protect people who need it is laughable, and it's a lie. I got those blocks of cheese, the powdered milk, the big blocks of butter, and it was there as a safety net for my mom. As she was married 4 times, and I had a lot of violent and drunk stepfathers that we had to protect each other from. But the SNAP program, can we look at it and see if the Department of Agriculture can get us better food? Enough of the sugar, the dyes, the crappy food that they have in those programs. How about getting rid of the Fruit Loops? Can we look at that program and streamline it and make it healthier for people? I think that's important, and I think that people who need it absolutely should get it, and I will fight because it's administered by the state. And I will work with Governor Ayotte and make sure that we do anything and everything they need to make sure those people get it. And with regard to Medicaid, people who need it absolutely should get it. They're already misrepresenting my position on this, and it's absolutely wrong. I want people who are low income, who are moderate income, who absolutely need it. They're never going to be able to survive without it. But the people who actually are there illegally getting benefits, and the people who are able-bodied and can actually work, can you work 20 hours? Can you volunteer like 4 hours a day? Can you? Because Chris Pappas not only said no, he said hell no. He doesn't want people to work. He wants illegals to get those benefits and people that shouldn't get them. And he's also against all the amazing things that are good for New Hampshire. It's easy to sit back and just say no, but you know this for a fact. You covered it. When President Obama was walking up the dais in the State of the Union, I said, sir, the insider trading bill that I've been working on is ready to pop. I need your help. Did he go to Speaker Johnson? Did he go to the Secretary Kennedy? Did he go to the President and say, sir, these issues bother me? No. And that's the just stark difference in our two approaches. I roll up my sleeves and get involved, and he's kind of a backbencher and just says no, no, hell no.
You know, it is one of the most harrowing parts of your autobiography. You lived child hunger. You were searching for food, literally, at times. Yeah. So, how can you stand by then? There are 15,000 people who might lose SNAP benefits. Certainly, somebody just like you could end up in that situation.
Yeah, listen, I'm not in favor of that. But once again, I don't think it's a problem. I think it's very important to actually look at the benefits they're getting and make sure that people who are on that actually get the things that they need. That's a real clear distinction. I want to make sure that if there's anybody on there that should not be on there, they should be off. Because if you look at Medicaid and you look at these programs, if we do nothing like Chris Pappas wants, they'll be over. They won't be sustainable. They won't be available for anybody. So I want to make sure that we get the workforce going. I want to make sure people that, they have the ability through all the benefits that we've now provided, because unemployment, there's opportunities out there now. The wages are up, the excitement is up, the opportunities are up, and we can get those people back in the workforce.
On immigration, strong majorities in this country want to see illegal immigrants who've committed crimes deported. What about the farm workers, the service workers, the construction workers who haven't committed crimes? Is it worth kicking them out of the country if it's going to harm the economy?
Well, listen, obviously that's something that's very important. I think the president addressed that. He wants to work on something in that regard.
Yeah, some people are saying that's like amnesty. Are you a hardliner on this?
Listen, I want to make sure that every person who's here legally gets the benefits. As a matter of fact, Chris showed up, and I've been to it before, and I think you've covered it, at Strawberry Bank, the swearing-in ceremony for people that have done it legally. But to think that somebody can come into our country illegally and get all the benefits that our citizens get, it's absolutely wrong. Yes, I support deporting the illegals and criminals that Chris Pappas and others are defending. Can you believe, would you ever think that ICE agents and our law enforcement people are getting shot at and ambushed, and Chris and others haven't said a word, yet they're protecting these people who are here illegally? it's just wrong. It's upside down, and that's another reason why I'm running.
But what about the people who are doing it the right way? You've got this man from Peterborough. He's a legal resident alien. Has lived here for 40 years. Works at Millipore Sigma. By all accounts, an upstanding individual, not a citizen. Now can't get back in from Canada because the administration won't let him over a drug issue back when he was 18.
Listen, I know people who have drug issues that I want to come in from New Zealand and other countries as a result of past behavior. They're not allowed in. So it's not just people like him, certainly. I feel certainly bad for them, but there are rules. There are situations where people who have done things in the past obviously have problems. That's something that's going to need to be addressed, but it's not going to be at the benefit of people who are following the rules. They need to be processed. All those people that are in line right now need to have an opportunity to come here legally, and respectfully, the ones that are not here legally, they're going to have to get at the end of the line.
Before we wrap up, I want to touch on some foreign policy. You know, back in 2014, you were a very loud voice calling out Democrats, calling out President Obama for not confronting Putin, for not confronting Russia enough over the Crimea issue. You know, fast forward now, you know, Putin's still Putin, Russia's still Russia. The political situation, though, has changed in the United States. What do you tell the average Republican primary voter who says, hey, we shouldn't be helping Ukraine at all?
Well, I think you need to look back when President Trump just dealt with, obviously, Iran and did what he did. You had our Senator Shaheen said, oh, he needs congressional authority. Well, when President Obama got bin Laden and dropped 26,000 bombs on 3 different countries, they didn't say anything. I went in and said, sir, you got big balls. Congratulations. You did a great job. But on the situation in Ukraine, yeah, very complicated. And I'm glad there's a bill going through Congress right now that'll put draconian sanctions. But if you look at the Afghanistan pull-up, which Chris Pappas and Joe Biden supported, it was the trigger. Gave Putin, Kim Jong-un, obviously President Xi, the ability to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to push the envelope. And here we are. I commend President Trump for trying to do it the diplomatic way, but I think ultimately there's going to need draconian sanctions to obviously get that thing to a peaceful resolution.
All right, U.S. Senate candidate Scott Brown, thanks for joining us. We'll see you out there on the trail and back here in a few months.
Great,
Appreciate
thank you.
it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back to discuss the recent Conval State Supreme Court decision on school funding. Stay with us.